Well, today it's a huge honor to welcome somebody who almost needs no introduction, Sander Arts, founder of Orange Tulip Consulting. He's also been and is fractional CMO to numerous exciting startups in the AI and deep tech sectors. Sander, your career journey, it's kind of like three lifetimes rolled into one. You started out in the semiconductor industry with Royal Philips after you graduated, and then Philips became NXP, of course. So you really got to cut your teeth in enterprise scale marketing, and we'll get into talking about that. And then after NXP, you went to chip giant Atmel, and you pioneered some pretty breakthrough marketing strategies that enterprise semi hadn't seen before. 15 years of that experience, you started your consultancy to help startup founders establish their brands, find their voices, really to help them generate those early wins. And along the way, you've actually been an active investor in a number of startups, helping one of them get acquired. You authored a book about marketing with some of your colleagues, and you've also instructed college level marketing courses, and you help mentor students. So let's kick things off, right? And start delving into your insights. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, no, thank you. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. I've been admiring you and your company from the sideline for a while, and absolutely my pleasure to be on this show.
Well, I appreciate it. And I've been really looking forward to gleaning some of your insights into marketing. But before we go that direction, I like starting out by asking this because it really evokes some interesting stories from marketers, Sander. What's your earliest memory of marketing making an impression on you?
I'm still driving a Volkswagen. So I was born in the Netherlands, and my parents had a Volkswagen Beetle. Actually, a number of those, and I have always stuck to the Volkswagen brand because it reminds me of me, my brother, my mom and dad just be in the car, and the Volkswagen was always. This is not a commercial, by the way. I'm not getting sponsored or anything, but the Volkswagen is always runs, yeah, and it never gives a problem. And I probably could buy a Porsche or whatever, but I just don't want to. I'm still driving a Volkswagen, and yeah, it's like, yeah, it always works, and there's never an issue.
It's amazing how those brands make an impression on us, sometimes early in life, sometimes later, but that loyalty can really endure. So it sounds like that
Yeah,
Volkswagen
yeah,
brand
I've
has
been a
touched both our
40,
lives.
yeah, 40-year loyal customer.
Shifting gears a little bit, and this may be a lengthy one, but could you give us an overview of your career journey and kind of focus on highlighting any of the key decisions you've made or the relationships that ultimately led you to the work that you're doing today?
Yeah, and I think the relationship piece is probably the most important piece, right? Because the truth of the matter is that sometimes when you look back, you don't really remember what you worked on, but you certainly remember who you worked with. So early on in my career, sort of stumbled into semiconductors. Right? It was Philips. I wanted to actually to do an internship and write my master thesis over at Philips, not knowing that I was going to land in the Philips semiconductor division. And then I stuck around, and sort of the rest is history. Um, and along the way, met an enormous amount of amazing people, right, that mentored me, helped me. One of them certainly is ex-CEO of Philips, recently left, Frans van Houten, but also people like Frans Scheper, recently ex-CEO of Intel in Europe. And then, of course, there's some more recent people. Of course, there's my long-term friend Mike Noonan, who everybody knows, who I'm very proud to be able to call my friend. But like in the recent years, right, in the last, I don't know, 6, 7, where I've been assisting startups, people to really mention are people like Jonathan Ross, right, CEO of Grok, Fabrizio over at Accelera, but also people like Rochin, right, Rochin Sankar over at Enfabrica, who's building an amazing company, and people like Caitlin, who I did Clue with, and currently work with her on a company called Class Genius. And so I think so there was like people, right, but then sort of the journey of being in a company and then being able to be exposed to a variety of different tasks and challenges. I think I was kind of lucky that Philips had decided to get rid of which spun out, is probably a better word, the semiconductor division, though it felt a little bit like they were trying to get rid of us. And that's now NXP, right? So the journey of then being in a semiconductor company, NXP gave me an enormous amount of opportunity to go build a brand, change the brand. We did the IPO in 2010, obviously. And then they asked me to be closer to customers, which made me move to Silicon Valley like 15 years ago. And then Silicon Valley is like the best candy store on earth, right? Everything and everybody is here. And met an enormous amount of amazing people that I enjoy working with uh, every day. And well, like sort of one last addition, right? The ecosystem here with money and technology and smart people, but also academic presence in the form of Carnegie Mellon and Stanford University has helped me a lot, right? So people like Cheryl Root, for example, over at Carnegie Mellon, who's running that marketing and entrepreneur class, right? MBA class. Those people are just truly amazing, also for the future of Silicon Valley and America, if you like. There's a lot of goodness coming out of those places.
It's really apparent, Sander, that one of the themes you could say of your career experience has been those connections and the great people that you've met, been surrounded with either on purpose or, sometimes accidentally.
Yeah, don't underestimate serendipity, you know?
And before we delve further into that, I actually wanted to take people even further back in your journey into entrepreneurship and being around entrepreneurs, because some people might not know this about you, but you had an interesting beginning. You actually, your first startup, you worked for an e-commerce company based there in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
It was actually a fishing tackle company that you shared with me in a conversation like back in spring. How did that experience impact your perspective about business and startups in general?
Yeah, yeah. We founded it. So I founded it with two friends actually. Who I'm still friends with. That's been a long time ago. We had seen that there was a lot of growth in a certain area. I won't bore you with the details of fishing, but we had basically been able to cut out every single bit of middleman, and we had made our way into China in '99. This is so it's a long time ago. Not that many people went and sourced directly from the source in China, so we were able to sort of wholesale out of China, push it straight into Europe, and then we're the first business that did business online. So the internet had just come out, right? If you think about it, 99, 2000. Yeah, we're the first business to sell fishing tackle in Europe online. And it was all about customer focus and giving people access to well priced, right, high quality fishing tackle. Yeah, it's about the customer, and if you can cut out the middleman, that helps a lot because it improves your margins.
It's a really cool story, and I think that it speaks to your ability to I suppose spot trends or spot opportunity out in the market, and that's a theme that I feel carries through. We'll hear more about this from you directly, but I feel that's a theme that carries through in the work that you've done in other areas, connecting with customers and seeing opportunities to really engage them in meaningful ways. But then, if we fast forward a little bit, after college, you joined Philips. And then that, as you shared, became Royal Philips Semiconductor, ultimately was acquired by NXP, global giant. What was it like to be a marketer in the semiconductor industry in those days?
Yeah, so it became so the Philips Semiconductor division became an independent entity, right? So it got spun out of Philips because Philips was a little bit sick and tired of the volatility that the semiconductor group brought to the overall group, right? So Philips's stock price basically went too much up and down. It's a simple story because of their semiconductor division, and it was also good fashion back then to sort of not build a conglomerate anymore and have like standalone businesses. Um, it was I never did an MBA, though I have a master's degree, but it was the fastest MBA on earth because it was private equity people that came in, right? So under the leadership of Frans van Houten, later on Rick Klemmer, who single-handedly changed that business, but also people like Johannes Hood, right, KKR's general manager or partner in Europe. There was a lot of pressure, right? Much needed pressure because as a standalone business, in times where everything is great, everybody is fat and happy. But when things go down, normally Philips would sort of absorb all of it. That didn't happen, and it turned out that Philips Semiconductors didn't have any almost right to be a standalone business. So there was an enormous amount of change, right? I remember big layoffs, big cost savings, a whole bunch of spin outs, sell certain businesses, and I learned a lot. And I think the most important thing I learned is that you have to go do the things that you're really good at. I remember one of the conversations with one of the private equity guys who walked in and he said to me, "What do we do here all day?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm doing marketing, but I do a whole bunch of things." And and he says, "We're designing and manufacturing semiconductors." He goes, "And you've insourced, which is typically Philips, probably still the case, insourced a whole bunch of activity that isn't core business." So we started this whole journey of insource outsource, not necessarily always driven only by cost savings, right? Sometimes yes, but sometimes just to get like better as a business. Yeah, I was the best MBA on the planet. Learned a lot, met a lot of people, got exposed to completely different um, type of dynamics, and it all worked out. Right today, NXP is an amazing, very successful company, and I have had the pleasure to work there for 12 and a half, almost 13 years before I left.
I'm jumping around a bit here, but in your book, Cut the Bullshit Marketing, you made reference to that fact that it was like the MBA that you never did, being a marketer at that level for NXP. And in the book, you highlighted that there was transformation that you and your colleagues felt needed to happen with respect to NXP's marketing approach. Can you give an overview about what was the scenario like and how did you and your team help NXP change that?
Yeah, sometimes I feel like a little bit of a grandpa, right? Because some of those stories by now are like, so I left in 2012, right? So let's say at the peak between 2006 and 2012, after I had become an executive, we did a lot of stuff, but some of it is like it's as much as it's dated, it's probably also still very recent. So thank you for asking that question. The the sort of the simple version is that there is a lot of technology being still right technology being created for the sake of creating technology, to be honest with you, right? So people are optimizing things that aren't even an issue in some cases, and um, if you build solutions for markets with a messaging that is emotional, which most people don't do because they're still also back then, but also still today, a lot of the feeds and speeds marketing that is happening. So we were able to sort of build marketing campaigns were evoking a lot of emotion in the market because we were able to tap into um, sentiments and emotions of engineers that very often, probably always, to be honest with you, uh, are way are going way over and beyond the speeds and feeds. Now, of course, you need the speeds and feeds, right? I wrote an email to the whole Fabrica staff last week or 2 weeks ago, and I said, if it wasn't for you, I'd be working at McDonald's, right? So, of course, all these speeds and feeds are important, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you lead with it from a marketing perspective. So, we were building what I called fully integrated global marketing campaigns where you bring all the disciplines out of your department together to make sure that you build a sort of highway to the customer, and you go measure on per marketing campaign what the return of investment is, and then you just bring that back into the company. But the journey between the sort of R&D side of the house all the way into a customer, it's in technology or in semiconductor, is a very long journey, but they're also people that are incredibly far apart in thinking, in education, in not necessarily in intelligence, because everybody is way more smarter than I am in all those companies, but just all the differences in um, disciplines before you've taken something to market needs to be bridged by somebody, and that somebody in most cases was me, still am actually, for a variety of companies, and that's how you pull the technology into the market where it starts to make sense, because at the end of the day, technology will only come to life when it's touched by people.
I really love how you talked about the importance of unifying from end to, I'd say end, but kind of starting point to ongoing, all of the efforts of the great, brilliant team members from R&D through design and all the way to manufacture. And I think that ties into this next question that's on my mind about how you took that experience to your next step at Atmel. And I've read about the activations that you and your colleagues were doing at Atmel at that time. And talk about that experience. Like, what direction did you and your colleagues take Atmel's marketing, and why did you feel it was important to do that?
Yeah, yeah, I'm smiling because there's like 15 names that come to mind as well, since we were talking about the beginning of the conversation, right? So people like Vegard, currently CEO of Nordic Semiconductor, but also Steve Laub, right, back then CEO and president of Atmel, were, um, I wouldn't say smart enough. They were forgiving enough in the beginning to let me do my thing. And I remember a whole bunch of conversations, especially with Steve, where Steve was a little bit more, rightfully so, because he's one of the smartest people I know, telling me what to do. And I said, I want to do other things, right? Because if you looked at the portfolio back in the day of sort of the up and coming IoT, Atmel had a microcontroller. They had a little bit of security, but we were lacking the connectivity piece, which eventually we got through acquisition. And so being a pure play microcontroller business is kind of nice. And there's still a lot of franchises that are doing incredibly well, right? Sometimes within a current business. I mean, ST Micro, Infineon, right? NXP, a bunch of those people still have very successful businesses. But for us, the ability to sort of pair all of those and go talk IoT, but also seeing if we could seed the market through Arduino and the maker movement was unique, right? So the Arduino, the embracing of Arduino and the embracing of the maker movement certainly set the company apart. Right? It culminated in Barack Obama inviting Atmel over at the White House, at the maker fair that he was organizing. So all of a sudden, this sort of, I don't know, we weren't large as a semiconductor company, certainly over $1 billion, right? But suddenly, this relatively unknown semiconductor company out of Silicon Valley was featured very prominently in the White House in the Obama days. This is also a little bit of a story from the past, probably 2012, maybe. But yeah, it's and that certainly goes back to how do you evoke emotion, because makers and Arduino users don't just use the product because they have to; they use the product because they love it. And that's also how I became CMO of Arduino after I had left Atmel, because the Arduino brand, if you tell engineers that there is an Arduino in the room, you see their eyes light up, and everybody gets thoroughly excited. Right? They use it anywhere and everywhere in prototyping, but also in their garages as they're playing with technology over the weekend, putting like sprinkler systems in their homes or automate their curtains or whatever. Yeah, people are thoroughly in love with it, and we were just lucky, sort of, at Atmel to have that 8-bit microcontroller sit on the Arduino Uno, which back then probably is the best selling Arduino board that exists, and therefore the technology was placed in the hands of an enormous amount of people. Right, some of them would go to revenue with our business, and others would just play with it. But one way or the other, it's very important to leverage it, because sometimes you use it for marketing and sometimes you use it to just pay salaries of the people that you're employing. Yeah, yeah, there is a lot there. Yeah, but there is a Stanford case about it. So Stanford University wrote a case study about it, which if you Google Atmel and Stanford, there's only one hit, and that's that thing, and you can download it because it's available everywhere, because we're not hiding any of that. But it's still being used in a lot of MBA and executive education programs around the world, actually, where people are being taught, right, by professors and sometimes by me, because I dial in, how to get results in a in a, let's call it, a highly commoditized market, in a place where marketing doesn't work, because engineers are either too cynical or too smart for marketing to work, right? So yeah, those are interesting sessions.
I love that you tied those together. The journey you took us through about developing the community while at Atmel, connecting to
Yeah.
Arduino, activating those passionate engineers, developers, tinkerers. You and your colleagues were kind of pioneering in a sense that you all were focusing on community very early on in kind of the big picture of semiconductor history. We're seeing a resurgence of that, at least from the people that I'm having conversations with. We're seeing a resurgence of that importance of community. In your view, like, why is engagement of community so often overlooked by marketeers in the semiconductor industry?
Uh, yeah. So you're right. I'm not saying you're not right, but there's also a lot to unpack there, because the problem is that everybody wants it until they see how difficult it is, right? So that's also why large semiconductor companies, like for example ADI or TI, right, will sell a commodity product that would work for 10,000 customers, because it's a commodity. I call it a skittle, right? Which is not very friendly, but it's like, right, the skittle part of the semiconductor industry. Even those products get sold to just a handful of customers, because of the ability to serve the customers, the ability to support the customers, and to sort of, right, make them successful. Whereas those products could be sold to, I don't know, I wouldn't say 10,000s, but probably 10,000s of customers that would use the product in a similar way. So most semiconductor companies, outside of probably Atmel, Nordic, there's probably one or two more examples, but most companies just continue to work in like the old, I'm going to say a few things that people don't really like old school way, where they just hand carry the next version of that product into a customer base that they already have, and it's successful, but it doesn't necessarily grow. You can look at ADI's uh, right numbers, revenue numbers, where you can see that their customer count doesn't necessarily go up. They're selling an enormous amount of um, older products to existing customers that they already had. Maxim had that problem, right? But then Maxim disappeared into ADI after that acquisition, and so that's like that's the DNA version. That's my point that I'm making. And then there's the community part that does have potential of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of new customers. And as much as everybody wants it, there's hardly ever people that really go and commit. Now, I always have, because I think if you get those leads in and you don't bug your sales organization with them, and as a marketing organization, you keep panning the gold, right, out of these leads, and the good leads go into your own sales organization, the medium leads go into the distributors, there is actually a lot of upside to be gained. But there is not a lot of companies in boardrooms that really have the appetite. Now, so that's sort of one, and I don't know how well that came across, but that's what it is. If somebody wants to come and challenge me, fine, right? It's also, by the way, why I'm assisting a company called Orca Semiconductor in their journey of taking on what we call big analog. There's a lot to be unpacked there as well, but the world will hear about them. Um, the communities, so that's the commercial component, right? Which is a little bit like this onto the DNA of semiconductor companies. Um, if you squint into a community, you can see the future because people are building stuff, they're looking at things, they're exchanging certain things, right? And certainly the Arduino community, back in the day, right? Another sort of grandpa story is that in Shenzhen, in probably 2010, the 3D printers, stuff that's like that are industries right now, didn't exist, right? 3D printers, drones, and stuff like that weren't like now people are like we supply semiconductor solutions for the drone market, but before the drones happened nobody was doing any of those things. So if you squinted, I don't know whether squinted is the past tense of squint, but if you squint you can see the future. So you'll see people build reference designs for drones and 3D printers in communities exchanging codes, right? That's where Fitbit started, right? It's that there where little bits started, which I don't know whether they're still around, but there's a whole bunch of industries that basically were created by the fact that people are like building prototypes, doing things, sharing code, especially if it's open source like Arduino, and then build the next segments of the future. Those are the segments that certainly initially will give you a large customer count until this thing sort of consolidates. But if you're there early, and we were at Atmel, right? Because I'll give you an example. Every single 3D printer was built on Arduino, the initial ones. Every single drone was built on Arduino. All of that was Atmel. And a drone, the beauty of a drone is it has a core and then it has these propellers. And there was an Arduino in every single part of that drone. So you'd sell 4, 5, or 6, right, depending on the number of propellers. Microcontrollers, just like just like that. Well, it wasn't, but that's why we would sort of put our arms around it, put the brand in front of these people, and see if we could convert them back to revenue and business in the company. And that's still happening, right? Because there's new verticals being invented as the world is evolving. But if you go to companies' websites, everybody's putting the same verticals in front of their customers because they're serving the past. If that makes any sense, there's nothing wrong with that because there's a lot of good money being made right now. But how do you serve the future is probably the better question to ask.
Sandra, that's so rich with insights. I'm definitely hanging on to your words about if you squint hard enough at your community, assuming you have built one, then you'll be able to divine a little
Well,
bit of where the future could
yeah,
take
good
you.
luck with that. So I'm not taking any credit of having built any of those. I've tried a few times and I have failed. The people that build communities are Elf and Vegard, the people that build AVR, right? 1000% of the credit goes to them. The Arduino guys, because they're amazing, those people have built communities. Now there is other people like Wevolver in Amsterdam, right? Two guys that build a community for engineers to have 500,000 people following them on their Instagram. If you want to put content in front of people, you should certainly go there. But I have never successfully built one. I have nurtured ones, and I have leveraged them for commercial purposes in a authentic, clean way. Because if you're not, engineers will turn off, as they should, by the way. So a community is just there for help, right? The internet is the best self-help tool in the world because you can just connect with people, and don't mess with it. So I never messed with it, and we just made sure that they grew because the first purpose wasn't to squeeze money out of it. The purpose was to continue to help people as they're on their journey of building the next thing, which means you're not marketing to them and you're just assisting. But of course, you can participate, and participation has many forms. So if you do it smart enough, there's benefits for everybody.
Yeah, and throughout your journey, you've been enabling those community members and helping to tell and
Yeah,
highlight their stories. So, um,
very much so.
shifting gears, shifting gears a bit here, you're very much aligned with startups, and it's not brand new. You have been for a while. You've been supporting the growth of some amazing founders, brilliant minds. But
Yeah.
compared to enterprise semiconductor companies, I'm curious to know, and I think a lot of people are, like your view on the inherent challenges of marketing for startups in the tech sector compared to the larger companies.
I think people in big companies forget that anything is possible. Like if you're in a big company, I don't think you realize that anything is possible. And you go into startup, you realize that anything is possible. I mean, just and I don't know how much people are following everything, but look at the recent success, right? That was like an overnight success disguised in a 7-year journey. These guys are awesome, right? Yeah, Jonathan built something, right? The first time I met with him, he showed me a chip and he explained to me how fast it was, and I just couldn't believe it because it was the early days of AI. Look at their success right now, right? Look at people like Pim, Intrinsic ID, recently sold his business to Synopsys. Built that was another 15-year overnight success. Um, but the anything is possible thing when you're in a company and where you have to do one-on-ones and you do board meetings and executive meetings and you got your travel and QBRs and performance reviews and all those things. I think you start to tend to forget that anything is possible. And companies like Accelera and Fabrica, right? Yeah, Grok are perfect testimony to the fact that anything is possible.
Well, so that's very interesting. The difference between having this kind of, lack of a better word, monolithic structure where it's so focused on operations and procedure, right? You can lose sight, one can lose sight of anything's possible. How do you come alongside those founders and help them bring that spirit to life through marketing?
Yeah, I salute all those people like, because they're all amazing. Yeah, it's just amazing, right? And then I always say the reason that these people hire me is because they want to lower the collective IQ in their companies, right? There can't be any other reason. And so I'm just there to help. So I think what they realize, so while they're maniacally focused on getting their technology right and out and correct and fast and all of those things, which is exactly what they should be doing because I'm useless in that side of the company. That I think they realize that they want an outside perspective, and that's where I mostly get hired right now, not only to just give opinions from 15 years ago, but it's like, hey, I got this thing, right? And then so the realization that there is like technology, a team, a timing, and a market, right? That stuff needs to come together, right? So the best possible technology built with an amazing bunch of engineers, right? People um, put in the market at the right time at the right growth. There's a lot of the AI stuff right now, right? Of course, I think it was a little early, and then generative AI made all of that stuff explode. Um, I think they're. I don't want to sound arrogant, but I think it's kind of smart to hire external perspective that then helps them look over and beyond what it is that they built, which is stuff that I would never be able to build, right? For the record. But I certainly can bring it to market, right? And there's a whole bunch of recent good examples as to where that happened. I don't think they're not overlooking anything. The only thing they're sometimes overlooking is that they do believe still that the technology will sell itself because after all it's amazing, and as much as it is amazing, I'm not denying any of those things. It's just not really how that works, right? And then yeah, so having somebody talk to them, right, me, and sort of see if you can get it out in a variety of ways, because there's no straight way to heaven. Just there isn't, unfortunately. Fortunately for me, but unfortunately for everybody else. Is yeah, I think that that's kind of smart. But the people that I'm meeting and the people that are building these companies are truly amazing.
There's no doubt, Sander. And I want to ask a follow up question to that because I think you can really speak into this. What role do those founders play in marketing their companies?
Yeah, That's not always the same, right? So some of these people are way more of a technology evangelist than others, right? Because there's business oriented people, there's product oriented people, right? And then of course there's the dynamic with some co-founders because but mostly all of those people's DNAs are sitting in the technology side of the house, right? So as much it's very rooted in technology, but I don't think there is like the one type. I Some of them are better communicators than others. What I love about all of them is that they're like authentic, and I just look at them. I don't know. I don't want to make my role larger than it is, but if you look at people and you can see where the strength is, where the authenticity lies, and then if you can match it to the world, right? There's different ways to do it. So I think you just take the lens because there's things you can't change, right? You can't change what media will write about. You can't change the person's demeanor or behavior or intellect or where they come from because there nothing beats authenticity. So if you can just sort of see these things and see if you can match them, which we, for example, successfully have done recently with and Fabrica, for example, right? It culminated in a big PR award for taking the company out of stealth, right? That wasn't me; it was me and a bunch of people, and and Rochin and Shrajit, right? The founders over there. I was just like this tiny person that was helping. Um, yeah, there is a lot. There is a lot going on there and to unpack, but there is no one recipe, which is also good, right? And sometimes you just sort of not compensate because they're not good enough, but you just compensate. If you need a more technical story, you play the CTO card, or if you need more of a business story, you do something else. If there is a community story, I have been spokesperson for a variety of businesses, so I have a profile myself, not even being an engineer, but sometimes somebody needs to sort of communicate a different story that is outside of business, outside of technology, and outside of markets. That's more of a branding thing. There is a lot of there's a lot of elements in that fabric of marketing that needs to be created as it hits the market. And the more you can find to work with, and the more people you have to work with, the better that gets.
I appreciate you sharing about that. And what you've helped me understand is connecting the dots of the importance of having somebody like yourself who has that outside view and also can enable, not come in and say, here's the roadmap, here's what
Yeah.
I believe should be done.
So I never so because people sometimes go, what is the methodology? I was like, there isn't one, right? So because consult that I don't have one. Yeah, there's one in the book. So but that's more for students and MBA students and executives that want to be educated. But the there is no standard playbook. The standard playbook is only been invented by consultants that want to scale their business and train other people. I don't have, and that's, I'm not bragging, I don't have any other people because I don't think it works like that. I think every situation is unique because everybody is in a different place, in a different journey, in a different market with different people, right? And different dynamics. And there is no like, here's the 5 things that you should do. I don't think it works. Though there is people that are decently successful at it, and am very, I wouldn't say jealous, but I certainly envy them, right? So people like Andy Cunningham, for example, they do have a very structured approach, but she's on a different planet, and she's really good at everything. So yeah, in my case, that doesn't work, and it because also it doesn't feel authentic to me. I don't want to come in with a playbook. And as much as it works, and as much as, just for the record, Andy is more than authentic. Right? She's also a good friend. Yeah, there is people that can do it. There's probably multiple ways to skin a cat. Is the short version of that answer.
Well, so far you've talked us through your experience of being able to identify opportunities, look into the future through community, talked about how you've partnered with and helped uplift startup founders. Let's tie this in. You're also an investor in multiple startups. So how do you personally spot the companies and the founders, maybe more importantly, that you believe have the potential to make the world a better place? And Kind of talk us through about how you evaluate those opportunities.
As much as I would like to say, here's the standard formula to success, there isn't one, right? In some cases, it's been because I became friends with them before I did any business with them. An example is Matt Johnson for a company called Layer out of London. First and foremost, he's a dear friend. And then at a certain point in time, he needed some money. And right, sometimes you have a lot of friends when you are successful, but the phase before that, you don't have a lot of friends that with money. And I was there with a little bit of money, so I helped him. That was just because he's my buddy, and I think he's one of the best people on the planet. But in other cases, yeah, you don't want to go waste your money that you earned through hard work. So I'm looking at teams, people that are like, what are they saying, right? It's like it's the vision for the future type of thing, and then I'm looking at who who they've been able to gather around them, because you can see the pedigree of people, right? And I'm not an investor in Fabrica, but I, of course, have some equity. But Roshan and Shrajit, if you look at the pedigree of that team, that's unbelievable, right? But the same goes for Grok, for example, and but also Accelera, by the way, out of Europe. And I'm not saying those things because they're my clients. There's other people that do similar things, but I'm close to them because I work with them every day. Um, that says a lot, right? The people that come, in a whole bunch of cases, certainly in Silicon Valley, the people that leave retirement to go build the next thing is like, hey, you have to really pay attention if you hear four of those stories in a kitchen over lunch where people go, well, I was retired, but and then I could work on this thing. It's like, oh well, there's certainly something happening here. And then, of course, markets, but nobody can predict those, right? Nobody would have predicted the AI boom the way it happened, as it happened, and as it happens today. But yeah, and sometimes you're right, and sometimes you're wrong, and sometimes you do it because you're friends, and sometimes you do it because you want to make some money. Yeah, and you want to have some skin in the game, and you want to show commitment, and there's no lack of reasons to do it. The only thing that is a little um, well, let's call it disappointing for a person that as impatient as me is that everything always takes longer than you think. But it's probably more the journey than the destination, I guess.
You may not have a recipe for investing, so to speak, but you definitely gave me great insights about how
It's
leading your
people.
decision making with heart
Yeah.
and people you care about, people you believe in. One of the ways that you've been supporting the marketing community in general is by taking your experience and insights and leading college level marketing courses. You've even helped cohorts of students that are developing startups and incubating ideas to give life to their businesses. Can you talk about one or two success stories from doing that?
So we wrote the book right a while ago, which is the our, let's say, poor attempt to at least try and structure some of the thinking. Right? It's because as much as I say, well, everything is unique, it also doesn't help at all, right? It's like every situation is different. It's like, yeah, thanks, but that hasn't helped me at all. So we try to structure it through a book, right? Which is actually a workbook. There's 6 chapters, and if you go through those chapters, fill them out, and you rip them out the book, you have a marketing plan if you do it correctly, right? It has personas and messaging, and so the stuff that's like, let's call that plumbing. And then there's practical case. So worked a lot with Stanford University and a case study writer on the Stanford GSB case that still talks about semiconductor marketing in the commodity market. That is still being used around the globe, actually, because it's the Stanford brand. So that's not mine. It's mine, but it's Stanford's. And it's available free. Nobody's making any money on that thing, and we shouldn't. It's just trying to sort of explain to the world what happens and see if there are some learnings, or at least at minimum see if we can inspire people. And then I take every opportunity to lecture, which is a decently selfish. It isn't, but sometimes I feel a little selfish because, hey, you get to go to a college campus where everybody is young, energetic, and passionate, and not cynical. For a guy that's like, becoming like a middle-aged dude, you want to you want to surround yourself with passion and young energy, and then I get to go tell stories, right? So I do a bunch of those around the country, but also in Europe, with a variety of universities. One where I'm very active is Carnegie Mellon, and I used to be very active at Stanford, but that's a little less these days. But the Carnegie Mellon one is interesting. Um, the people that come there in Cheryl Root's class, if you haven't checked it out, and if you're interested, you should certainly go check it out. It's not for everybody because there is a decent price tag, but you get what you pay for. Um, they're amazingly smart people. A lot of people that have worked for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Most of them are engineers, and they decide to go get educated on the business/marketing, etc. Side of the house. And there's a multitude of examples of people. I won't take any credit for any of those because I think those people would have been very successful without my stimulation. But there's a lot going on in all those universities. Yeah, and well, for me, it's just cool to get questions from the next generation of people that are 20s, mid 20s, late 20s. Some of them are a little older, but yeah, people that worked in software companies in Silicon Valley that have a perspective that I just don't have. And I probably learn more than anyone else in those classrooms.
That's very cool. And you get to interact with those who are going to soon, well, eventually, once they graduate, be the next outsiders coming in
Yeah.
to support the next generation of tech companies. Sander, as we kind of take our conversation around the last turn in the track here, I was curious if there is any particular marketing campaign or campaigns that have really captured your attention recently. And it doesn't have to just be in the tech sector. It could be any space.
So companies like Yeti, right? The Yeti coolers, they sell like a $600 cooler. Hey, or I think they're stock listed by now. It's well, they have amazing products. I have a few. It is amazing, but some of the marketing material is amazing. Right? They build documentaries and they got videos, and it's all about the experience. Now, B2B people, right, and people that I help, when they hear me say this, go, "Ah, but it's a consumer brand." It's like, yeah, but the dynamic, right, and the demeanor, or just sort of the thinking, is good. And then I was smiling because there's a company called Andres, run by a good friend of mine, Michael Knight, ex Berkshire Hathaway company. They distribute fasteners, screws and bolts. Yeah, well, that's like the commodity of all commodities, but it isn't, right? So as much as I can give you, like, Hershey's is great. I don't really want to do that. I think an Andres marketing campaign, communicating to the world that they are nuts about their customer success, right? And then loading that brand, right? Because nuts and bolts. Maybe I'm the only person that thinks it's funny, but it's like there's probably stuff that will really resonate in a market where people are just buying commodities. Because so I studied that market a little bit. So I'm taking you now to the nuts and bolts, literally, part of the world. There's companies that make good money in manufacturing, but in this case, Andres is distributing fasteners, right? Just a marketing campaign that is centered around how nuts they are about success and customer success and quality, and right, how passionate they are about their customers' projects, is probably an interesting one. And because the lens, that's why I'm giving you the Yeti example. It's borrowing from consumer kind of insights, because at the end of the day, it's always people that buy technology, which sounds like an open door, but I think everybody keeps forgetting, right? I'm in a lot of persona conversations. What is the persona? It's like, yeah, it is complicated. First of all, they're a human being, and then of course there is the economic. But we've all been to school, right? The economic buyer and the whatever decision maker. We can go through all of those, but yeah, it's how do you go win the hearts and minds of people? And so a marketing campaign that is like tapping into emotion while they're selling a commodity would be just awesome to do. I'm certain he's watching certainly watching this thing. I hope he made it all the way to the end. But we should certainly go do that. I would actually, that one I would go run for free because I think that would be awesome.
Thank you for that. That was a great way to kind of round out our conversation, and hearing from you about your experiences. Ultimately, people are buying from other people. And if you can activate that emotion, even if it is a commodity, what some people would just walk right past, you can truly win no matter what market you're in. So,
Yeah.
Sandra, if someone wants to connect with you, whether that's to explore, engaging your insights in services for them and their company, or discussing a potential investment opportunity, or they just want to talk with you about an insight they heard you share, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm pretty active everywhere, mostly on LinkedIn. But I think I even put my phone number on LinkedIn. But you're more than welcome to go share it with people. So yeah, I live my life out in the open. There's a lot of activity that I undertake on LinkedIn. That you can find me everywhere. I'm on all channels, probably almost 20 hours a day.
Sandra, I just want to thank you again for investing the time to talk with me, share your insights with the community. And I hope that we'll get another chance soon to have a further discussion.
Episode 2. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I always appreciate opportunities like this. Thanks for very thoughtful questions, and I enjoyed it very much.